It's never just that, but it kind of is that larger pattern. There may be one thing that is super huge, like the death of a child, that kind of triggers. We say that there's a program that can be from a long, long time ago, or a program that starts in the very beginning of life, or something that is huge that starts right now. But I've never found where there isn't other things that are reflective. And or we can say one big stress can reawaken all the little stresses. So there's little stress, little stress, little stress, and then finally the brain's like, you need help. We're going to give you this to help you with that. And fibromyalgia, those kinds of illnesses, autoimmune, that is a lifetime of those kinds of feelings, devaluation, unworthiness, all of that really transforms into a fiber.
First, a quick word from our sponsor.
At MPB Health, we believe in empowering you with the knowledge you need before making any decisions about your healthcare. We're passionate about making healthcare accessible, flexible, and cost-effective. We've designed solutions that fit your needs and comprehensive alternatives that address your overall well-being. Our memberships offer a powerful combination of services. You can alleviate the burden of high unexpected medical bills with medical cost sharing. Forget the stress of navigating healthcare alone. Our concierge team becomes your personal advocate. They're with you every step of the way. They help find the highest quality providers and facilities, all at the fairest price. They'll even help track down the most affordable medications. Our memberships are a modern approach to healthcare. Talk to a healthcare advisor to learn more.
Willkommen alle to the Freedom Hub weekly health, biz, and politics show. Our normal Freedom Hub show is on Thursdays. Wednesdays is reserved to health because that's how we make our money. Well, Jim and I are disruptors, innovators in the health space, and to attract more love and resources our way, we like to help others. Win-win. And let me show our screen for those who are new. And there's an email from a yogi that the guest knows. Here is today's alert that I'll put in chat. And let me just hide the meeting control so I can get to our website. Thank you, Zoom. This is our website, your-mp.com. And if at that site, if you click your media hub on any week, you will see we have inserted the alerts that you get by email. And you can see the Wednesday show that Jim will introduce. And tomorrow, if you come back, we'll have a health-related show on clean food from Zen Honeycut. That's part of the MAHA effort of RFK and Trump. And if you scroll down, you see coming guests. The founder of our brokerage is next week. I didn't know that. I'm booked out through March, so I never know who's coming, unless I look there. Then our video channels at the bottom. Don't expect to see much on YouTube. They censor us, so we don't really like them. And with that, I will stop my share, Jim, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. I'm excited, particularly excited about today's topic, recall healing, because back around 2014, I think, and our guest can correct me maybe, I was hired to produce a series of training videos on recall healing by the Academy for Comprehensive Integrative Medicine and Dr. Lee Cowden. The founder of Recall Healing, Dr. Gilbert, it's French Canadian, so it's Gilbert, but Gilbert Reynaud was doing the teaching with the help of a few associates, including today's guest, Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson. So the basic premise I think I learned was that every disease or health issue usually had an emotional cause as at its root. And you might be similar with the work of Louise Hayes, for example, who says things like, if you have a urinary tract issue, you might be pissed off at somebody. I mean, that's the really broad piece of that, but there's always something to that. But recall healing took this to a much deeper level. And I remember in one of the case studies I filmed, Dr. Renault was working with a woman, many years of depression, and he asked her if she could recall when it first started. He said to her, were you on an incline or a diagonal, like a steep hill or maybe a staircase? And I certainly didn't see any relation to that. I didn't know why he asked that question. But the woman actually paused and said, yes, I was on a stairwell. I was talking like my boyfriend. I was on a stairwell and talking to my boyfriend. He said he was leaving me. And that's when my depression started. I was like, wow. So I was, I was very surprised and very impressed at the same time. And I'm still just as impressed today as a board certified biofeedback practitioner. I often turn to Dr. Renault's book. Let me find it here. She might have it. Yes? Can you see it? I don't know. The Health Pyramid. And it's phenomenal. When working with friends or for friends and family, the book really helps me zoom in on issues and see what's going on. And I've used it many, many times. So how does it work? How does learning about the diagonals or stairwells in your life and what may have happened in the past actually fix a problem? To answer that, let me turn it over to Michelle, the U.S. Director for Recall Healing, because she can tell you more than I can. So Michelle, take it away.
Okay, awesome. I sure will. Let me share screen. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm here to help you unlock the secrets to illness. And so like Jim was talking about, it really is that many people don't understand why they have illness. And when you can understand the why behind the illness, it can open up health and wellness. So I give great gratitude to those that believe in this work, Jim, and longtime friends, and it's amazing. 10 years now. It's and I think you're right, around 2014 when I was finishing up my doctorate as well. So, and to all of you who know about the importance of liberty, of health, and to be able to make choices that are good for you. So I'm going to give you some considerations today, a little introduction of recall healing and mind body medicine, some related research that has been pretty much ongoing since I started my work, and explanation of recall healing in practice and some letting go tools, all within a very short period of time. So just to hit on little topics. And I'm noticing people that I know in the audience. And so, welcome. Nice to see you. So, some considerations. Do you have anything that bothered you in your life? Are you losing sleep over anything? Do you have strife in your home, with your kids, with your family? We know in our country and in the world specifically right now, and that definitely can have an impact on our own health and wellness. Do you have unhealthy relationships or boundary issues that are constantly being crossed? Do you have issues at work? Do your friends lift you up and make you feel good in your life? So if there's anything that I say that's like a pebble in your shoe, that can cause issues in your body. And so what is recall healing? Recall healing is a mind-body medicine modality that utilizes life experiences, somatic awareness, and the client's genealogy to address underlying emotional roots of cancer, promoting healing. Recall healing provides individuals with an opportunity to make connections between past trauma and current illnesses. And when I say trauma, trauma can be big trauma like war, which we have in the world, or losing jobs or flooded out houses. That is huge trauma. Absolutely needs to be considered. But also we speak about the stress of our daily life and how that can have an impact on our current illness. So it assists clients in shifting patterns through mind-body skill development, and both awareness and skills are used to improve and potentially eliminate symptoms. And so I've been really honored and blessed, privileged to be able to teach and shared this tool with many people. And personally, my grandson has healed of a brain tumor. I've been so many little things and bigger things as well. And it works on not just illness, but behaviors and patterns, relationship patterns, that can continue to emerge. So I look at recall healing like a superfood, like an avocado, that the root is the seed of why a person is ill. And then all of the fruit around the seed is the things that we do to access that root and to help support a person through their journey. There's the complementary fields of study are mind body medicine, which really is that connection, energy medicine. Everything is energy. And when you transform the energy that is blocking one, then many other things can transform. Narrative approaches like narrative therapy, narrative medicine, artistic narratives, expressive therapies, somatic psychology, psychosomatic medicine, epigenetics, genealogy, all of these are complementary fields. I remember getting into grad school and thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to love recall healing. But because there was no basic scientific research regarding recall healing, I was met with fierce opposition. So in grad school, I began to triangulate and bring in all of these systems of thought. They're there in the work that we do. So something that's super important is the nocebo effect. So many people, when they have been diagnosed with a particular illness, this is a phenomenon that creates a negative expectation. So if a person is given, a prognosis, you have 2 months to live, many times, 2 months to the day, that person will die, especially if they believe the doctor. So we do use research, and it actually is coming out that there is a phenomenon where the person's expectations, the negative expectations about treatment or the condition that leads to adverse outcomes, even in the absence of harmful interventions, that can actually lead to other aspects. So Dr. Hammer, which is, I'll explain about his work, but Dr. Hammer, he really understood that when a person is diagnosed, it starts a whole nother round of conflict for that individual, because then they get into fear and worry. There was a recent study, which was really amazing, published in JAMA Oncology, which explored the nocebo effect in the context of cancer diagnosis and how patients' expectations about their prognosis could influence their quality of life and their survival rates. And so it suggested that if they believed it, if they understood it, then those kinds of things would actually respond accordingly. So in recall healing, I've done 3 official studies, but I have been also teaching not just in the United States, but also internationally, as I am co-director as well. And I've been operating an institute out of Poland that I have trained many people, both in the United States and as well as Poland, Russia, Ukraine. And every year, when the students present their research, they actually are working with clients throughout the process, and they have to present 2 successful cases and 1 that wasn't so successful, or that one is in just a work in progress. But there's so many themes that really come across when the people are doing their work. So even if they don't heal entirely, attitudes change, relationships change. And so just this year alone, there was 244 successful cases of applying recall healing. And so it was really exciting to be able to see this work in progress. And so I've been training like this, for 4 years. I didn't put all of it together yet, but there are themes that are coming out. And then in my own individual work of what I see with clients and when they begin to do this work. So some of the themes that are common are that there's a beginning of an understanding that there is something beyond traditional medical treatment. There's a conviction and belief in the healing effectiveness of recall healing. development of an application of self-healing skills. People start to recognize that they have the ability, that they're not stuck, that they don't have to live out this experience forever. They don't have to do this or that, but that they have power within themselves to be able to heal. There's a symptom response as a result of an emotional shift. So when people make connections, literally, it can be just like that. So very quickly, just like trauma can really cause big issues immediately, so can helping a person to understand the root cause. It can make an immediate shift. And that's actually what happened with my grandson. We found the story, and literally 2 hours later, he's different. Now, he still had a journey to walk through, but after 14, he's 14 years old. So that was 10 years ago, a brain tumor, and he's doing great. So I feel really great to have known this information to be able to help my grandson. The recognition of multi-generational interpersonal influences on health. We always look at just us, but it's never just us. We are part of a family, a part of a bloodline. We have many people that we say that we line up with, or that we're even named for. And that has an influence on our health, believe it or not. There's increased psychological health and well-being just from understanding and applying these tools. Developed a greater degree of satisfaction in relationships and life. People were actually able to take a step back and look at, wow, what am I carrying? What does this have to do with me? Why is this showing up in my life? And so it really helps to begin to change the perception. And when we change the perception, we can change everything. There was a deepened spirituality and a heightened sense of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. Mark Twain said that the right word is a very powerful agent. And whenever we come upon one of those intensely right words, the effect is physical as well as spiritual, and it's incredibly rapid. So we have key words for different illnesses. Not every illness has a key word, but we ask questions. The question leads, just like Jim was talking about, the woman has said, oh, she was able to understand that she had a story about the slope or the slant, and that leads to more. And so when you ask the right question, many things can transform. So in practice with recall healing, the primary objective is to expose the hidden emotions that negatively affect a person. And that often leads to the disease, and then to resolve those emotions. So we have discovered that these tools that we use specifically are a very good way to help us. So we say, and Gilbert says, we are like Sherlock Holmes. We are looking for the puzzle pieces because we're building a puzzle of our life, of the things that we have experienced. And so we look specifically at, what is the diagnosis? When did it start? And what is the undercurrent of that particular diagnosis? And it never goes against biology. So Jim used the example of being pissed off, but also in biology, which is what we stay close to, biology says that if you have a bladder issue, what is going on in your territory? Animals use the bladder to mark their territory. Well, we're no different. And so if people are invading our territory, or something's going on in our territory, then we can have an issue with the bladder. And so when a person begins to talk about what's going on in their territory, that gives them the understanding. The project purpose, which I'll talk about in in a little bit, and the repetitive life cycles, the generational syndrome, this is the tools that we use every day. Now, it shows up differently for every person, but doing the timeline, the family tree, looking at the project purpose, with each person, it leads to the stories. So fundamental to each listed tool is finding the emotional event that predisposes that disease. So much like digging for gold in a large uncharted territory, these tools that we list, they help us to look where to look first. So not that we're looking in this big thing. We all know that stress and illness go hand in hand, but it's stress specific. It's not just willy-nilly. It's very specific, related to biology. So I like to tell that that there was not too long ago in Michigan, a guy was digging and he thought that he found a post, but it ended up being a woolly mammoth. And so that's kind of what happens in recall healing. You start to do the work and you find these woolly mammoths in your life and in your project purpose. So our work is based on Dr. Hammer's work of German New Medicine, and so that's the science behind what we do. And Dr. Hammer developed 5 laws, and he said that we're like a rocket: psyche, automatic brain, and body, and that everything that we experience in our life is processed through our psyche. Our education, our culture, where we live, how we live, our values, religion, beliefs, all of that is processed, and it's the way that we look at our problems. So we filter the way that we see things through all of those experiences. Our automatic brain is responsible to keep us alive from moment to moment. Our survival brain, our reptilian brain, doesn't care about what really happened in the past or the future. And so if a person is really struggling, spinning in their mind over and over again, then the automatic brain sees this as a threat to our existence and will pull it out of the psyche, download it into the body according to how we feel in that moment. And so all of this is the process of discovery. Dr. Hammer said that there's 2 laws, 2 states, with every disease, every illness, there's the conflict active and the resolution. And so we're going along normally, we eat, we sleep, we wake, we do all the things that we need to do. And then we have this big stress. So Dr. Hammer, his son was shot. And so he spent the next 3 months trying to figure out, what the heck? How can I keep my son alive? And so then his son dies, and 6 months later, he develops testicular cancer. Well, in biology, how do you give life to an individual? And for the male, it's through their testicles. So the body responds according to that felt experience. So if we can't eat, we can't sleep, we're ruminating about our problems, we have cold extremities, our digestion shuts down, this is something to pay attention to, because this is sympathetic overdrive, and our body only stays in that mode for a period of time, and then the automatic brain will take over and say too much, and it downloads it first into the brain, where there'll be what we call a Hummer focus, and simultaneously onto the body part according to how that person is feeling. And so if it's vital, or these like, I don't have food or shelter or clothing, then this can be something that downloads into the brainstem or the cerebellum. If it's more relational, then it's more new brain, and that can download into the white medulla or the cortex, and then simultaneously onto the body part. So every disease and every illness, it works this way. When the person finds a solution, either a practical solution or a transcendent solution. So practical, I don't like my job, so I move. Practical. A transcendent solution is, I don't like my job and there's no other jobs available at this time, so I'm going to take up Kundalini, for instance, and try to focus more on my spirituality, growing that to transcend how I'm feeling in my job. When a person finds this solution, then they can go into what we call a recovery phase. So when you get sick, when you have a fever, when you want to sleep, sometimes it is just that. Sometimes it's just a little chill. The brain will send a message: you found your solution, this is awesome, fills in that micro ulceration in the brain and simultaneously onto that body part. And sometimes that's when cancers can come out, or when the diagnosis can happen. A myocardial infarct happens at the height of this. This EC that you see here is called the epileptic crisis. So it can be seizure-like, or it can be something big like a heart attack, where the height of this recovery is equal to the height of that conflict itself. And then ultimately, we go back to the normal mode of operating. So fungus, bacteria, viruses all work in helping us to go back to the normal mode of operating. So too much to be able to explain right now. But again, we are like psyche or rocket, this 3-layered rocket: psyche, automatic, brain, and body. And when the automatic brain feels threatened, it will take over, pull out from the psyche, and download it into the body according to how we feel. And this law of 2 phases, with every disease, every illness, it works like this. So the Hummer focus, it literally looks like a bullseye that downloads into the brain according to how we feel. So on non-contrast CAT scans, you can see this little bullseye, and it looks literally like a point with concentric rings around it. And then when the person finds a solution, and they don't always have to know that they have been that they have found the solution, because how many times have you been sick with a flu or a cold and you thought, oh yeah, I had some stress. You didn't really know what you resolved in that moment. And we often think of the illness as being the bigger challenge, but really we were sicker before when we had this conflict. So in recall healing, we look at illness like the iceberg. So whenever I ask somebody, hey, why do you think you have this? They always give me a reason why they might have it. Well, that's the tip of the iceberg. And then we begin to look beneath the waterline. And at that first surface is our experience. Everything that we have experienced in our life, it programs. We have it and it's there. It's not like we forget. Our body remembers. And then we have this project purpose and the generational syndrome. And so what does not come back to our awareness can return as a destiny. The project purpose is the 18 months before we're born. So that's 9 months before conception. The conception itself, the whole pregnancy, the delivery, and the whole first year of life. I share my story because it's kind of a fun story. My mom had lots of trauma. She was given up for adoption. She was severely abused for the first 2 years of her life. And when she got pregnant with me, it was outside of marriage. It was not under the greatest circumstances, but she prayed that I be a girl because a girl was going to save her life. So, of course, there was boundaries and things that I had to learn with mom, and that it wasn't my job to take care of her and keep her alive. But in my work, I help people stay alive. And so it was part of my message that I have carried. I kind of enjoy my work. And then also she named me Michelle for the Beatles song. And I find it so humorous that I love the Beatles my whole life. And my first husband was George. My second husband was John. I live in Georgia. And then I was teasing one day and said, oh, but I've moved on from the Beatles. I married Mark as my third husband. I'm very happily married now. It's so wonderful. And one of my students said, yeah, but Mark Chapman killed John Lennon. And I was like, oh no, you can never get away from these kinds of things. So we think we choose, but we really have this as a program. All of us have some little program. So sometimes if there's financial problems in the beginning of one's life, then they might grow up and be an accountant. Or if there's issues around health and wellness, they might be a doctor if somebody died. So we look at these very specific things about why we are the way we are. And then we look at the timeline. So we look at when we're born to when we leave our home to become independent. Everything that happens between 0 and 18 years old, for instance, in this moment, we look at the good, the bad, the indifferent. It all repeats in the next cycle and the next cycle and the next cycle. So if somebody has a diagnosis of an illness at 60 years old. So we would look, oh, if they're 60 years old, we can look at half their age because the universe is mathematically equated. We can divide half and half and half like that. Or we can use a person's age of autonomy or their cycle of independence, where they're 6 years past 3 times their age of independence at 54. And so we can look at an event that happened at 6, at 24, at 42, and it will give us. So if there's something, an onset that happens here, they can look and see, oh, what is the same felt experience that happened at 42, 24, and 6 years old? And it helps to build the picture. And then we look at the generational syndrome. So this was defined by Anne Anselin Schutzenberger. When she would do work with people, she would use their genogram, their family tree. And she began to notice that there was this magic square or this cycle that repeated. And children with birth order numbers 1, 2, and 3, they were separated. Of course, they're part of the same family, but when she looked at the whole timeline, the whole family tree, she began to discover that if somebody had a depression and they were a number 4 child, all of the 1, 4, 7, 10 children had depression, or there was suicide, or there was something related to what that person was experiencing. And the same with the 258, the same illnesses, sometimes the same professions. And then that's also exacerbated with if a person is named for someone else. So if you've been named for grandma or grandpa, you carry their unfinished business as an invisible loyalty. So we look at all of these and we build the family tree. You may be a different number for your mother or your father. That matters. So for, if you're a number 1 for your dad, then on your father's side, you would look at all the 1, 4, 7. But if you're number 3 for your mom, you would look at the 3, 6, 9 children on her side. So, and to see, what do I carry? What unfinished business? Do I have any invisible loyalties that are manifesting in my life? So I thought I would give just one case study. So Simon, he had a prostate cancer, and the emotional conflicts behind prostate are worry for children and grandchildren, feeling soiled and unclean, out of the normal sexually, and a mismatched couple. The prostate is the guardian. It is, the protector. So we look and we ask, like, how does that person, how have they felt? Have they felt, attacked? Are they worried for their children and grandchildren? It is the sexual organ to cleanse. And so if a person feels unclean by what they're doing, then that can contribute to a prostate issue. And then a mismatched couple. So lots of times prostate presents after retirement. And so if you think about it, many, many times women, no women here for sure, but they have a tendency to be critical of their husbands or their partners. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And in this particular case, Simon, he had been recently retired. He was a great guy. And he was a farmer. He was very fit, but every time he would eat something, his wife would say, "Oh, you shouldn't eat that. Why are you eating that? You're going to get fat." And she was constantly on top of him, just constantly saying things. In the cycle before, he had a stepdaughter. He had married his wife. He never had any of his children of his own. This absolutely is part of biology. So many times when men have prostate issues, there's been abortion, and obviously they're not having an abortion, but their baby has been aborted. And so sometimes their family name doesn't get carried on. His family name was not getting carried on because he married a woman with 2 girls and they never had any children. And in the previous cycle from this retirement, his stepdaughter was being stalked. She was held at gunpoint. It was a really big deal, and he was very concerned about her. And then in the first cycle, he had gone to college. He was a football player. And the guys said, okay, they found out that he was a virgin. And they said, okay, we're going to go have a party. And so, after practice on this week, get cleaned up and we're going to go to this party. And so they went and they had arranged for a prostitute to come and to service the whole football team. He wasn't one of the first. He wasn't one of he wasn't the last. He was somewhere in the middle. And all he could do was call her a whore. And and felt so dirty. He had never shared that story. And we're as sick as our secrets. And so once he shared that story and he cried, and we did an imagery to kind of recreate that. And I explained to him, I don't know any woman that would just service the football team without having severe sexual trauma herself. And so that kind of helped him to begin to change the perspective. We did some letting go. We did some other things to kind of, look at that. And the prostate issue was resolved. So that's kind of how we look at it. We name it, we claim it, so we can dump it. And we use these letting go processes. We use the Ho'oponopono, which is the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, which is just is simply taking responsibility for whatever may show up in a person's life and saying, I'm sorry, Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And this one practice alone can be really transformational. So many things can just happen from that. And of course, it's not the person's fault, but they carry it. It's happened somewhere in the family clan, and it's been an imprint that then kind of passes down. And so when we do Ho'oponopono, you clear it and you clean the energy. We use principles of EFT, the butterfly hug, where we tap and we just say, even though I felt this way, I love and accept myself. I forgive myself. I don't have to die for this. And then I have people take a big, deep cleansing breath, and then we move on. We reframe, is it true? Is it absolutely true that it happened that way? Or do we have a belief about certain things? And then we also use the small property, which is a creation by Dr. Sabah, who was a student of Dr. Hammer. And he created this because our brain speaks in symbolic language and just says, I was a small property ravaged by a storm. And that means that I was a little baby brought into a world of unfinished business. But today the fine weather has returned. The forest and river have become calm. So the forest is our ancestors. The river is our mom. The house is vibrant and shines in the sun. The house is our body and it shines under the divine light. And the sun is also symbolic of our earthly father. The field is returning to its order, health, and beauty. The field is our body, and it's going back to the normal mode of operating. It really did this as a turbo function to help us through those really hard circumstances. So thank you to my diseased organs. Thank you to myself for doing my healing work. And then I always like to end with a deep cleansing breath. So we use I have a tornado, which talks about an emotion and visualization to kind of just reframe. They're simple tools, but it's not easy work and it does take time. So in summary, your story does matter. The things in your life that you have had that you suffer for, or it comes up and you're not quite over that, or you still have some of those emotions, those are the things that you want to pay attention to first. Recall healing helps to understand that connection between the emotions and the physical health. And it is a holistic approach. It can be used with any other thing that the person is doing. It doesn't matter if it's mainstream or integrative. It can be used as an adjunctive therapy to help in that person to resolve things. So like I said, simple tools that create lasting effects. So this is a way to get in touch with me. And also, as a kindness, if you guys ever want to do a workshop with me, if you key in PAV 25 for the Pavilion 25, then it will give you a discount. There's an intro level workshop on my website. That one is $99, and so you can I think we have like $10 off that one, and then $25 off all the other ones. But if I can help in any way, I'm happy to do it. And I appreciate you. And I hope that this has been, insightful for you. So,
All right. Yeah, questions. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. That was, wow. We're ready. We should book her for the next, the second half of this. Already. So much.
very, very quick, very fast.
Yeah, there's so much there. And I want to add actually on the story about the woman on the stairwell and the depression, 30 years of depression. Because that was over a few months, went back doing the filming. When I returned and we talked with her again, it was gone. I was like, wow. Same thing, somebody had breast cancer. It's like, where is the tumor? Is it on the top of the nipple, the left? I mean, it's really detailed. And then that disappeared also. So anyway. So
It's so amazing when it works like that.
when it works yeah, absolutely. And I need to understand it better also. Okay, let's go to, I think if I've got the right order, Charlie, you're up.
Thank you. I want to share real quick a Bible quote. Let me close that off. Close that off. Right here. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Really.
so I love this thing you bring up, generational problems. I think that's so fascinating. On our Thursday show, more than our Wednesday health show, we go down the rabbit hole. And this thing about the creator is, I think, having more and more relevance. the deeper we go in the rabbit hole. And you know, generational curses. There's the quote in the Bible where that occurs, that phrase, and punishing the kids for the sins of the fathers. And I'll stop my share there. Do you want to talk a bit more about that? Because I think that's really significant.
It's very significant. And so we see time and time again these generational patterns that come down, and a person always thinks that it's just them. But when you look at who you line up with, what were the circumstances? So where there's broken marriages or children outside of marriage, then down the road, you see children outside of marriages and you see broken relationships. You see the exact same thing you think is you, but it's never just you. Or where children have been given away, and then the next generation, they may have to adopt a child because they can't have any children. So those conflicts absolutely continue to go down. And it's very specific. It's not just, we look at, oh, generational curse. Well, that doesn't translate into what's going on in the daily life. Alcoholism, addiction, for sure, money issues, worthy issues, devaluation, all of it gets handed down. So that's a great point. So thank you for that.
And just to follow up on that, what if you don't know what your grandparents, for example, were really like, or, what do you do then?
Well, first of all, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so anything that you're experiencing, you can automatically understand that you come from a long history of other people. Like I said, my mom was given up for adoption, but now there's 4 generations after my mom. So all the things that are happening now give us insight as to what has happened before. And many things have come into our awareness after doing this work. It's kind of miraculous, really, to understand that we had no idea. And then as we do this work, little insights come, little information. Even this morning, I was working with one of these people that are on here, and we were talking about this very thing, about these insights, and how didn't know it before, but as she's done this work, more has come into her awareness, more stories. It's really beautiful process.
Nice. Okay, Dr. Montalvo, you're up.
Thanks, Jim. I love your presentation, Michelle. Have you ever heard of a doctor by the name of Dr. Henry Wright? He's a pastor.
I have heard, and I know his work really well. I know people that have gone. In fact, my husband's late wife went and did a whole series, and I've had other people go with him too.
Yeah, because he wrote a book called A More Excellent Way. I read it back in 2000 when I was battling prostate and colon cancer, where he goes into the spiritual roots of disease. In fact, I just Googled it up. Brought it up on Amazon. He's got a few of them exposing the roots of spiritual roots of disease, autoimmune diseases, high blood pressure. And it sounds like you're doing kind of the same thing. I remember when I studied homeopathy, my wife was battling breast cancer, and it was in the right breast. The homeopath, who was kind of intuitive in that way, he was basically pointing to the fact that she had breast cancer in the right breast because she was under stress due to the fact of her previous marriage. She had gone through the divorce and the fight that she was having for her boys. And there's so much to what you're saying. And one of the struggles I have as a healer, a naturopath, homeopath, is getting past and breaking through those types of situations. I think that's where homeopathy helps in terms of being able to release a lot of that emotional things that are pent up in somebody that is expressing as a disease.
Absolutely. It all works together. I love Evox, biofeedback, homeopathy, herbs. It all works together. And what I find, I do emotion code, I do recall healing. I focus a lot with the emotions and what you can do, out of your pocket. So not having to rely on technology, even though we still rely on technology. But
Right.
what I find is when you teach these other tools, then it helps to continue that process. So where, some people are still looking for the magic bullet, and there really is no magic bullet. When you do all of this work, and the homeopathy helps. And, you know, it gets you to that next place. It changes the energy so that person might have the ability to do more work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Um, I do think there's a magic bullet. I don't think we have access to it right now, but it does raise the question because I've thought about that. If there was a magic bullet, assuming, let's say, the military we talk about on the Thursday show has those med beds or these magic bullets, what about all the issues we're still carrying? You know, I'm curious. Who knows? But any
Right.
thoughts on that? You ever think about that?
Oh, all the time. And I agree that there are many things, but it still is about the energy. And anytime a person is diagnosed with something, there is an undercurrent of the emotion. So even if we talk about the jab and all of the things, or people who got COVID, they had the conflict. And so you still have the conflict, and then and even the turbo function, or the turbo cancers that are happening, they have the conflict, but it just exacerbates the process by the chemicals, by the poisoning that we're getting, for sure, no doubt about it. And so, and I agree, there are things that can help a person to heal, but why did they get diagnosed in the first place? And so we do have to look at that and kind of transform and shift.
Yeah. Morley, you're up.
Well, thank you. Michelle, that was a wonderful presentation.
Thank
Uh,
you.
you connected a lot of dots. Maybe for the first time, I understand German new medicine. So thank you
Oh,
for that.
nice. Awesome.
I sent an article to both Charlie and Jim. If one of you could pull up that article about fear and hypoxia, if you're able to bring that up. I think I'm in complete agreement with you about the process, but the magic bullet is energy production. It's not rocket science. If we can't make energy to respond to stress, that's when all the problems arise. And Mark Hyman's definition of stress, I think, is best. The body's inability to make energy for the mind to respond to its environment. And what your intervention does is help release the fear that they have. Jim, are you able to call up that article?
Yeah, I just got it. Hang on a second. I'll put it up.
Because when we're under emotional stress, we're in a state of fear. Now, if you can click the 4 arrows down in the blue bar, just so people can see the whole title. Yeah, there you go. When we're in a state of fear, we have to spell it properly. It's FE-AR, and that way we see the symbol for iron. And when we're in a state of fear, we become a magnet for iron. Now, what you may not know is what causes cancer is iron accumulation. And at a cellular level, the body is not able to make energy, cannot recycle iron. It accumulates and it creates a regressive form of energy production called cancer. It's not a disease. It's just a metabolic state of ignorant energy production. And what's important about this, and I think your work is amazing, but there's a biochemical and metabolic underpinning to it that I lay out in my book called Cure Your Fatigue. But you got to spell cure right too. It's CU-RE. So you see the symbol for copper is what regulates iron. Mm-hmm. And what's going on in fear is hypoxia. And there's 3 forms of hypoxia. There's being at the top of Mount Everest. It's called altitude hypoxia. There's pathogenic hypoxia, where the body uses neutrophils to shoot oxygen bullets at the pathogens to kill them and uses up oxygen that should be used for energy. And the third is called copper deficiency. It's called functional hypoxia. And anyone who's in a state of fear has iron building, copper depleting, and then what's playing in the background, which this article does a beautiful job of explaining, is that adrenaline is rising in a state of stress, as well as cortisol. Why are those 2 hormones so important? because adrenaline is a fuel injector for putting iron into the tissue. So you've got this hormonal mechanism to increase iron to force the cancer production. And what does cortisol do? Cortisol increases a protein called metallothionein fivefold in a stressed out body. And what does metallothionein do? It binds up copper 1,000 times stronger than it binds up zinc. So you've effectively taken energy production out of the equation. And what your intervention does is, in some very significant way, is it changes the perception of fear, which then changes the production of hormones, which then allows for greater energy production. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Fascinating and wonderful. I would love that article if I could.
Well, yeah, and I'm
That's
happy.
Yeah, I'll put it in the
happy
chat.
I'm happy to
perfect.
explain it to you. You know, I got a bunch of YouTube videos. My email and phone number are all over the internet. But if you have trouble, I'm sure Jim or Charlie would be happy to pass it on. But I thought your presentation was very well done, and I really appreciate the ease with which you're able to take people out of the state of fear, which is really, really important.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and I just put it in the chat so people can grab it. Charlie.
So before the show, Michelle, you mentioned our mutual practice with Kundalini Yoga, and I always like to push that as part of the healing, because so many folks don't do yoga or meditate, and I think you and I know that it's a pretty significant therapy to help folks neutralize, get on their path and all that. And both that yoga and the Bible emphasize the power of the word. Mantra means the mind's projection through vibration, and you showed that quote from Mark Twain about the right word or the impact of the word. You want to talk a little bit more about the mind's projection through vibration or words or that kind of area?
Well, for sure that the word, when just like when you speak about, Jim used the example of the slope or the slant. And the person was automatically able to get to that space. Words have power, words have energy. So when you can find that right word, when you ask the right question, that transforms. And breathing and sound, it all works together. I recently did a sound certification, and so I'm finding that I've worked with many people for many years, and using the tuning forks is bringing up a whole new layer because of the energy, because of the vibration, and asking the questions. And so it is this really unfolding. And just it was interesting. My stepson is going through a really challenging time, a big breakup, and I heard him on the phone with my husband talking about that he was like just dirt. There was nothing good about him, and my heart was just hurting so much, because I know that when the brain hears this over and over again, then, just as Dr. Morley was talking about, it ends up continuing that process, and having that culminate in the body, the fear and all of that. So I had to interrupt, and I said, really? Those kinds of messages to yourself are no longer serving you well. Maybe at one point they pushed you to do certain things, but no one is all good and all bad. We have all kinds of different things. We are good in ourselves. We are light beings. We might have things, but life is about learning, and you are learning through these processes. It was really beautiful. And my heart was so sad, because I remember myself talking about myself that way, calling myself a fat pig and so disgusting that nothing that I did was good. And so I think it gives me the ability to walk with other people to help them over that hump, so that they don't talk to themselves, so that they start to rise their vibration and speak to themselves in a kinder and more loving way.
Nice. Um, just for a second, I'm going to share this, show you, because you mentioned vibration words, which we've talked about. Screen two, I think this will show up. Do you see Zoom controls, or are they not there, or are they there? Do you guys just see the screen, the YouTube, I mean, BitChute, Secrets of the English Language? Or, hold on a minute.
Yeah, I can see that. It's coming up.
Oh, okay, there it is. Secret spells of the English language. So we've talked about this a bit, and we don't need to go into it, but there's a lot of work that's being done and has been done on the English language. Words like good morning, morning is also having to do with death. You know, when someone dies, you mourn. It's a lot of that. Oh, hello, oh, hell, backwards. So I just wonder, I think it's just, I guess to go to your point, we need to, it's on my BitChute channel, things I can't put on YouTube. We need to really be more cognizant of what we're saying, how we say it, what other people are saying. It's a whole fascinating area. I don't know if you've looked into this much, but
Lot.
a lot.
And
Yeah. We
and
need,
and the spells that are on the music and the things that are being said. There was a song, I think it came out in the 90s, about I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. The song is very catchy. I love the song, but every time you're saying it, you are casting a spell on yourself and the things that you're saying to yourself. And so that was like the perfect example, but for sure.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
recently learning about mourning and different things, and so we're trying to say we went to recently to Hawaii, and so aloha, and so instead of good morning, and hopefully it's
Yeah,
not
yeah. We work. We need it. We need a new language, or to correct it, kind of. I think.
absolutely.
Okay, let's move over to Sharon.
Hi, Jim. Well, great segue, because I was thinking of my spiritual teacher has a quote. It's that every thought, word, or deed will either purify or pollute the body. And I guess it's not like the words physically go into the body, and we're talking about the biofield. And Jim and I, we both work with frequencies, working with the biofield. And I'm familiar with German new medicine. And of course, Louise Hay's been around for a long time. How does your practice, Michelle, differ from the Institute, or I don't know what the official organization is for the German new medicine
So
work?
sure. So what I say is the German new medicine is the science behind what we do. We use
Mhm.
that. And then Dr. Sabah, who created total biology, and it's kind of the way that I describe it is it's the art of what we do. And so it's the way that we find the different issues. And so it adds to German new medicine. I took all of the German new medicine courses. I've had people from German New Medicine come and learn from me, and they're now using a lot of the same principles of timeline, project purpose, family tree in that, because it with Dr. Hammer, it was hard to find it. Dr. Hammer didn't have a challenge, but just using those basics, how do you get to it? And he would only look at the 6 months to a year before, like when a person was diagnosed, but it typically is not just that, it's a whole lifetime sometimes of those same felt experiences. Also, that ancestral pattern, which is not talked about at all. And so it actually adds to that, and it creates a better efficacy, really.
Well, and expanding from there, do you ever consider perhaps the concept of past lives affecting the physical health of people now?
So personally, I do, but we don't focus on that. And what we say is that even if you believe or don't believe in past lives, so if you believe, then you're in this life based on what has happened, and that you're still carrying the same kinds of energies.
Right.
Okay. And then we can say if a person doesn't believe, that's okay, because generationally, it's the same thing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's still getting that frequency out of your biofield, because there are spiritual practices that you can do to actually get rid of physical complaints and visualizations in another way. So, but fascinating. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to look into this more.
Awesome. I would love that.
Thank you. Peggy, you're up.
Hey, Michelle, thank you. That was just a great presentation. I am an audiologist by education and training, but do a lot of sound therapy work and I'm familiar with emotion code, a bunch of other stuff, still learning. But I wondered, this might be a really difficult question. In your work, do you find people that have had chronic stress, chronic ongoing stress, different from like a one-time incident that's traumatic as far as healing is concerned? I'm sure it has a lot to do with the individual, but do you see any?
Well, I mean, none of us are immune from stress. We all have stress. And, sometimes people will say, oh, I had such a great childhood. That may be true, but there are little stresses. There's other children that come into to the world. There's oftentimes stuff that happens at school. It's never just that, but it kind of is that larger pattern. There may be one thing that is super huge, like the death of a child, that kind of triggers. We say that there's a program that can be from a long, long time ago, or a program that starts in the very beginning of life, or something that is huge that starts right now. But I've never found where there isn't other things that are reflective. And or we can say one big stress can reawaken all the little stresses. So there's little stress, little stress, little stress. And then finally the brain's like, you need help. We're going to give you this to help you with that. And, fibromyalgia, those kinds of illnesses, autoimmune, that is a lifetime of those kinds of feelings, devaluation, unworthiness, all of that really transforms into a fibromyalgia or an autoimmune issue. You're welcome.
Devaluation, I mean, depression, is there any of that in the United States or world today? I'm surprised.
No,
Um,
I don't
yeah.
see it.
Oh my gosh. Suicides. Yes, Mark, you're up. Mark Froman.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Hey, Michelle, great talk. Just a quick recommendation on after like brain tumor surgery, alternatives to radiation, and like colon cancer, alternatives to radiation and chemo.
So you're asking what is an alternative? That's what you're asking as far as what my
Yes.
oh,
Are there things you recommend besides the radiation or besides the chemo?
well, so I don't interfere at all with what a person chooses because, we know in this world we can get into a lot of trouble. If a person chooses that, oftentimes they've already chosen it. But if a person were to ask, I would talk about energy medicine. I would talk about all of the thing, copper and, detoxing. I would talk about liver, all of those kinds of things of ways to support that you don't have to go through that process, and that, if they're open, I'll lead them to different articles, but I'm super cautious about saying really anything because we know the billion-dollar business, the
Right.
trillions, but I always say, so many people will tell me, oh, it goes against everything that I believe. And I say, well, if it goes against everything you believe, there will be repercussions for you doing something that goes against what you believe. So why don't you do all of these other things? I've seen, and I give them hope by telling them, I've seen many people heal, serious cancers, pancreatic, liver cancers, things that typically don't heal. I've seen that people heal. And so I'm just cautious, but for sure. And we found the story, and especially with old brain kinds of issues, if you find the story, what happens is that it transforms the body. So then it's benign if they ultimately do surgery instead of having to do all the other things that oh, you should do this or you should do that, kind of thing. Does that answer your question? I hope.
Yes, it does. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. So we are at the top of the hour. Michelle, if you'd like to tell the audience, tell our audience where people can reach you again or follow you if you're on social media or just your website and training.
So my website is soultreetransformations.com with an S. And I am on social media, Michelle LaMasa-Dawson. Somehow Soul Tree doesn't go through. I'm on Instagram and all of those. I actually have Telegram, which I love. And so I have YouTube, many videos that are out there. But as we know, it kind of gets buried. And so you can find me through my website and just looking that way. And like I said, I have on my website there are the 3 basic workshops and an intro workshop, and so those are all recorded. And then I'll be giving a weight and digestive workshop in January, and then a toolbox in person in California in March. And so there's many things that you can come and participate and learn recall healing.